Welcome to Bring Out Your Badass Self, a movement to break your negative thoughts and habits and instead focus on building each other up and encouraging fearless authenticity.
Each week, we will get vulnerable and share experiences alongside our guests and audience. Come rediscover your inner badass self.
Good morning, BOYBAS Nation. And so today you will notice that we have two guests that are joining us today. So we have Maria and Bruce. Welcome, both of you.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
absolutely. And you guys may remember them from a previous episode that we did where I think it was our year anniversary, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a good one.
And so also, you might notice that Cate isn't here today. And so Cate actually injured herself. I'll let her tell that story when she gets back. But send her your wishes that she gets better. And we're still super excited about having today's episode on curiosity. And so when I started to think about the word curiosity, the phrase that comes to mind is curiosity killed the cat. And it was funny because you just had a cat on screen prior to us joining today. But what I found out is that the whole idiom of curiosity killed the cat, the last part is, but satisfaction brought it back. And I don't think that most people know that because the cat actually didn't get killed in the actual full sentence of that. So, I mean, they have awesome. nine lives, right? So
yeah,
they're not going to be killed. So,
satisfaction brought it back, huh?
I know, exactly. And so many think, curiosity is a quality that people possess. But I think that it's actually a skill that needs to be exercised. And so we'll talk further about curiosity as we start to get into today's episode. But first, I want to just start off by saying hello to people that have been joining us. And please let us know that you have joined us by saying hello. And I see that we already have some people here. So we have Stephanie. She says, good morning and happy Friday. Oh, man. Jesse says, what up, troublemakers? Good morning, Jesse. And Jen says, good morning. Happy Friday. Hoping Cate gets better soon. Yes, we are all hoping that. Teresa's joining us. She says, good morning. And then Kim says, happy Friday to you amazing badasses. So how's it feel to be called a badass? Joining the show, Maria and Bruce.
A different B word for me. Go ahead, Bruce.
I've been called worse.
You've been called worse.
Yeah, just a different B word. Yeah.
Oh, man. And Eric says, good badass morning. And so as you guys continue to join us, please say hello. We definitely want to hear from you. We also would love to hear from those individuals that tend to sort of sit behind the scenes and never say anything, but we know you're out there and you're listening. Just say a quick hello, just to say, hey, yep, I'm here. So we would love the lurkers just to also say hello. And if you're joining us after the fact and view this after the fact, be sure to let us know that you were listening. So we like to just hear from you. So as I was thinking about curiosity, and Bruce, I think this was the topic I asked you guys as panel, what we would like to talk about. And Bruce said curiosity. So Bruce, I'm curious, why did you choose the topic curiosity?
It's one of my favorite topics. It's just something that I always kind of feel connects my whole life together. I kind of think that, anytime I tell stories about going back to my life or anything that I do, curiosity is kind of completely entangled in everything else. So it's probably like the thing, but again, to be fair, I mean, curiosity has a best friend in my life, and it's imagination. So curiosity and imagination are my two best friends, and I basically facilitate for them. So I kind of got to make sure I put a shout out to imagination. But, curiosity is definitely part of it came first, because without the curiosity, my imagination would have had nothing to do.
Yeah. Well, it actually leads me into the first question. I'd love to hear what the audience thinks about this as well. And so, when you think about the word curiosity, who comes to mind and why? And so, if I could start this off, so when I started thinking about this, for me, I thought about my dad. And the reason I thought about him, he's no longer with us. He passed away in 2014. And I was talking with my husband that I feel like I have gotten closer to my father after he passed away, if that may
Mhm.
sound weird, but I always felt like I was very much like my mother. And it wasn't until after my dad passed away that I started to pick up all of these things that I was like, oh, I'm actually really like my dad in this way and in this way. And one of the things had to do with curiosity. But the reason I say curiosity is because he was always inventive. He was always innovative in the things that he did. He didn't always look at things in the same way as a lot of people. And so I really loved that curiosity with him. It was also a playfulness. Like when I think about curious, I think about playful as well. So that's the person that comes to mind. And so I'm curious for the audience who you think, but Maria, let's talk to you. So when you think about someone in your life, or, a person that is within your life now, or maybe in the past, who comes to mind and why?
It's me.
Mm-hmm.
So and I was trying to think really if there was anybody else that like maybe I mirrored that off of or anything, but I think I don't want to say the first. I'm not saying other people weren't curious. It's just that I like to do extreme excuse me, extreme sporting and fuck around and find out. So I don't know anyone else like that. I know lots of innovative people in my family, right? Like
Yeah.
where there's a will, there's a way. I can definitely say that. But as far as curiosity, that would be me and my daughter. And now the new kitten that take the ranks of curiosity.
Yes. The word curious. So when Bruce and I were talking and we wanted a secondary person, I think we both were thinking about you for this topic, because curiosity definitely is a word that I would use to describe you. And so
That's
Bruce,
awesome.
yeah, Bruce, what about you?
I think two people. I think also like Maria, I found my curiosity in myself. It was always there. But I think the first person who kind of vindicated me in terms of being able to kind of say, hey, you know what, this is okay to do this, was like I found a mentor in Leonardo da Vinci in a book that I discovered at a public library when I was like 4 years old. And I kind of saw that this person spent his whole life trying to understand things. And I thought, okay. And that's a long story, and I can go into that for, I was just telling the story the other day. But then I think in terms of the present, Julie, who is my lover and wife and everything, is probably the best manifestation of an adventurous mind. I mean, when we talk, Maria talks about the fact that she's always had an adventurous mind. Julie has an incredibly adventurous mind. It's kind of like if there's trouble to be made, Julie's going to find it. And I think that's the current manifestation of curiosity that kind of like manifests in my life. But it begins with my own investigations and my discovery of Leonardo da Vinci as a mentor.
Yeah,
I like that.
I like that as well. And so I do want to just, Tanya has joined us and she said, good morning. And so the question that we have for everyone is, when you think about the word curiosity, who comes to mind and why? So I'd also love to hear from the audience on this. While we're waiting for anybody to give their thoughts on that, I want to ask you guys, I asked my daughter this question. I said, how do you think curiosity differs across various age groups? And the response that she gave is that she feels that when you are younger, you're more curious. And she goes, I feel like adults are less curious, is what she told me. And I don't disagree with her on that. I think that a lot of times we are all initially curious. And a lot of times we are almost taught to not be curious sometimes. And so that's why I still think that it's like something that is innate in sort of everyone. And sometimes you have to like, you unlearn being curious and then you have to relearn being curious. And so, Bruce, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, Maria's running to try to get something. She's going to show us. It's like a show and tell thing. This is kind of like, there it is.
It's a kitty cat.
All right. So, anyway,
Sorry.
Okay. Maria. All right. So anyway, I don't think curiosity changes, but I do agree that society tries to beat it out of us.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's considered frivolous and irresponsible, and you're supposed to be different things. But I feel that that's the wrong way to look at it. So I don't really believe it changes. I just believe that we get changed away from it, and I think we have to fight to keep it. I believe that when we mentioned before about playfulness, I mean, when you watch bears or cats or dogs or animals, their play is their education, and their education basically kind of manifests their curiosity. They tumble and see how, when I tumble this way, what happens when I tumble that way? That playfulness is how we learn to survive. I mean, one of the things, and I think it's one of the other further questions, is the value of curiosity. Is it what helps us to persist and not become part of the fossil record? And that is something that we really don't appreciate and understand. Our survival is based on our ability to be adaptable. We can't be adaptable if we're not curious. And if we're not curious, we're not going to be able to see things and then kind of play. Maria and I will kind of like run in there and like jump in head first and realize, oh, that water's not that deep. You come out and like you need 18 stitches across your forehead. But I mean, at least we found it. It's like, okay, it's 18 inches deep. It's like it's the depth of a head, And then like, we try to patch us back together. So, Julie has a saying similar to Maria's, which is pulling Bruce from the wreckage.
I mean, it happens. I was thinking about this. So I was reading through last night and trying to get like prepared for what we're like, okay, what are we doing? It's time for this event now. And I was thinking, and I never realized this on purpose, I guess, but I feel like there's two like types of curiosity. I'm sure there may be more, right? But I found that, we've got that inherent curiosity that you see in children, and they're very curious, very, very curious. And until someone beats it out of them, which we hope not, right? Then they'll stay that way. So that's pretty rad. But what I was thinking about in my like most recent years is how I'm trying to now intentionally be curious. And so that's a little bit of like it's like the intermediate level, I guess. So it's like where I would have previously, and you could use any feeling word, right? But the easiest one for me is like upset or mad, right?
Yeah.
So it's intentionally trying to switch that into curiosity instead of judgment.
Exactly. And I think that that's a key word. Is a lot of times when we are judging, my daughter was just saying something the other day, and I was like, Riley, I'm like, that's coming across really judgmental. And I'm like, what I have found is when you're starting to judge people, you should be more curious and think, well, why am I thinking that way? And I said, one of the things that I've learned is that other people are really a mirror to you. So they're reflecting something back, maybe something you don't like. And what is it about that? And then also maybe things that you do like. So why is that? So it's being curious into going deeper into yourself and reflecting. And I love the word. You'll notice I say curious all the time. I say I'm curious. Like before I ask a question, I'm curious, and then I'll ask a lot of times questions. It's so like because I think that asking questions instead of assuming something is key, because a lot of times we have these things that start to go through our minds based on past experiences. We're like, oh, this person's like this, we're automatically judging this person. So instead, if we go, okay, let me back up. let me just confirm a couple of things, or maybe, unconfirm some things, because it could be both. And I think that's the biggest thing that I love about curiosity is when you start to ask questions, then you're like, oh, that's interesting. And so you start to get a different perspective on things, or you start to look at it in their perspective instead of just your perspective. And that's why I really love curiosity. And so I'm gonna, so Tanya had stated, curiosity killed the cat. And I know she came in just a tad early. And I put, funny enough, I mentioned this at the beginning, that curiosity killed the cat, but satisfaction brought it back. And then Teresa says, growing up, curiosity was such a bad thing. It took me many years to become curious again. And so that's an interesting point. So do you think that sometimes families end up negatively impacting people from being curious? Yeah. Go ahead, Maria.
Thank you. Yes, I have a comment. Yes, I think it's easier to control people who aren't curious. And that's where I'm going to leave that. Bruce, do you have comments?
No, it's true. I think that everybody will try to control you. And I think there's a reason why there's two different kinds of people, I believe. There's the kind of people who want to judge, and there's the kind of people who want to understand. And we kind of touched on this briefly. I've always wanted to try to understand. I mean, curiosity is basically that innate ability to understand, because understanding allows you to possibly persist better and adapt better. Whereas judgment is basically an attempt to control. I think they're both fear-based mechanisms. It's like, if I don't understand, I'm going to be eaten by a bear. And it's like, well, if I don't judge this person, they're going to eat me because they're a bear. So I think that they're both the same thing. But I find one of the things that I find very telling right now is people will judge without understanding. And I'm like, what are you judging? It's like, you don't even understand what you're judging. And I think that's because we have this innate fear of understanding. And I think that's basically part of a big part of the problem.
And I think the other part of that is that I also think that people judge because then that would be going against what it is they believe, which is really their ego. And so they have to protect the ego in order to, well, if you're correct, then I've got to be wrong, and I can't accept that. When in actuality, we both could be right. And so that's one of the things that I tend to look at now, is that based on how you grew up, you could be true. This could be true for you. And how I grew up, this could also be true for me. And so being curious allows you to view things in multiple ways. And even when you're like solving a problem, one of the things that I think is really interesting to do, and this is one of the things I stopped myself from doing in the past whenever I was a consultant, is when you start to do a project, and I think we can all say that most of us are in project-based businesses, whether it's building something or building solutions or, all those different types of things. A lot of times when we see something and then we see it again, then we see it again, we automatically think for the next one, it's got to be like this as well. Instead of taking time to ask the questions and understand, is this really the same scenario? Because sometimes if you ask yourself, if you immediately go down a solutions and say, this is the solution, you might be missing out on other opportunities. So one of the things that I've learned is find a solution, then try to find another solution, then try to find another solution. And sometimes you might find something even better in the mix. Or you might have found that the first one was right, and you're just confirming.
What's the winner?
Yeah.
Yeah. I run into that with software a lot. It's funny you should explain it that way, because that's really how it is, especially with you can just take the instance of a macro file or something like that, right? There's 3 or 4 different ways to get that data into your ERP. And it's not that there's a best way. I mean, I have my personal opinion about what's the best way. But also what I find more with each and every new client is that it's what's best for them.
Yeah. Bruce, what do you think about finding solutions or approaching a project?
I find that my other best friend is like my curiosity kind of like always kind of like tries to provoke my imagination. And I find that they've been kind of like best friends, and so I think that what I do is I just kind of sift through the things that just kind of start pouring in. And, aside from kind of like, I kind of tried, I'm better now at eliminating the obviously bad ideas. Like, well, let's just tie a rope to yourself and like, fly off the roof. But it's like, oh,
that's a judgment word though, Bruce.
Yeah. Like maybe look, use that. So I think it's just a kind of question of being accessible to the things that your body naturally will do and your brain will naturally do. So, I mean, I don't know if I have a process of imagination.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a kind of an openness to it. I think that I've always kind of said to myself, I've always trusted and had great confidence in my ability to figure things out. So therefore, I just kind of like, okay, when in doubt, go to my imagination.
There you go.
Yeah. So do you think that imagination and curiosity are relatively the same for you?
I have a thing called like a kind of like a deep entanglement. One of the things I deal with in my own work is something I call metaphorical operations. And, the metaphor are kind of things that become entangled. So they're kind of like, inseparable. Your curiosity and your imagination are deeply entangled. You can't, the one basically feeds the other. So I feel as if, they're just matched. I think they're different. Your imagination is the thing that basically tries to, your curiosity asks you a question.
Yes.
And your imagination supplies you with answers. And then they have a dialogue back and forth. And I think it creates, in my case, it became a love affair. I mean, my curiosity was this very peevish, kind of like provocative, skeptical character. And my imagination was this very arrogant, egotistical, kind of almost somewhat pompous character who kind of like said, oh, of course this is the answer. And then my curiosity would laugh at it. It's like, that's terrible. That's embarrassing. So what happens is they've kind of tempered each other over the years. So my two companions have basically kind of formed this love affair, which allows, I like I said, I facilitate, I take them where they want to go. They want to go to the museum or they want to go to the botanical gardens or whatever. They'll kind of like, we're going here today. I'm like, okay. And I just kind of follow them around and kind of like, I bring them snacks and make sure they have like what they need if they're kind of cold or whatever.
Yeah.
Yes.
You made me think about something when I was growing up. One of the things I always heard was that there's no stupid question. And I started thinking about that and I was like, oh, that's interesting because you're saying that questions are the curious aspect. But then on the other end, you had other people are like, oh no, that was a stupid question. Like you still hear those people sometimes. And so when I think about curiosity, it also requires us to potentially look at not being afraid of looking foolish or making mistakes, because in order to be curious, you're probably going to fail. And that is actually quite fearful, I think, for a lot of times for people. What do you guys, and I'm curious for the audience, what do you think about fear and looking foolish and being curious, having curiosity?
I've never minded looking like a fool. I'm not sure where that comes from. I think I'm gonna put on the list of questions.
I've made a lot of people laugh.
Yeah, yes.
I've made a lot of people laugh, and then they're kind of like, and they're like, oh my god, he figured it out.
Yeah,
and then I probably shouldn't have laughed, but I mean,
yeah.
I think I laugh as much as they do sometimes at my kind of like silliness. I'm like, why did I? And my answer is always, it seemed like a great idea at the time.
Yeah, I was living my best life.
Yeah, but you fell 35 feet. It's like, yeah, but it seemed like the right thing to do. Yeah. I mean, Julie and I have a project that we do. We call it Imaginaria. And one of the things we do is the first thing we do is we ask people, what do you love? And if you ask, let's go back to the first question. If you ask a 4-year-old or a 2-year-old, the list is just like, blah, 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 blah. And as people get older, those answers become harder to come by. And I think the reason, I think it's because of what we said. you can leverage that fear to
Mhm.
pull someone away from their curiosity and their imagination. And kind of like you can, like Maria says, then you can control them. You can't control them if they're going to like run after a shiny object. It's like, okay, guys, here's what we have to do. We have to storm this hill. And in order to storm this hill, it's like, where'd Maria go? Where'd Bruce go? I'm like, where's Kate? Where's Sarah? You know,
That's
we're
funny.
all like running, you know, chasing bunnies or like shiny objects. And they're like, well, how are we going to be able to do these things if these people just kind of end up following their own paths?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that becomes a problem for people.
Other people. It's a problem for other people.
Not a problem for us.
Yeah. And I think that when you're not afraid to make a fool of yourself and when you're not afraid to make mistakes, I have found that by being that type of person, I give permission to other people to go, oh, okay, this person weathered the process. Maybe I can do it as well. And so I find that by being curious or by being not afraid of looking foolish or just doing things that most people would be afraid to do, it allows other people to go, okay, well, what could I do, you know, or what within myself, what's keeping me from wanting to do this other thing? So it makes them ask a question to themselves of, well, what am I really afraid of? Like, why am I keeping myself from doing this? And so I find that curiosity, by asking yourself questions when you're fearful, when you think that you won't succeed, when you know, what is it that you're really afraid of? You know, when you ask yourself those types of questions, people are like, I guess I really shouldn't have anything to fear on. And so I find that curiosity, just asking yourself that question when you're feeling a particular way, can allow you to go beyond what you thought you were possibly capable of doing.
And I want to take that one a step further because yes, I've been there. And what I've started adding or doing is transforming my questions. So we're talking about intentional curiosity.
Yes.
So it's not just like, why did I do that? Right? It's more like, how can I support you to make a different choice next time? Right? And so it's it's intentional. It's not just like angry or shaming yourself, right? Because then you have to worry about all the things that you've heard for so many years are now going to be coming out of your mouth to self. So when you're being curious to self, it's not bleep, you bleepy bleep. Why'd you bleep and do that? It's, oh my gosh, how did we do that? Let's try again. And how can we try again?
Yeah. And so ask the question again, because the first time you said it, it came across as judgmental to yourself. And so ask the question again.
Oh, like like the one that you just had?
The one you had about that you asked yourself.
Oh, transmute that one. Sure. How can I support you to make a different choice?
Okay. Because you felt like the choice wasn't correct?
I just made that one up.
Okay, I gotcha. The reason I'm asking is that I'm wondering if you could instead ask yourself, what did you learn from this? And then what can you expand upon? Because I find a lot of times we tend to judge ourselves like, oh, we made the wrong decision. Well, what did you learn in the situation?
What is wrong?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. What is wrong? Exactly.
Yeah.
So many times we put the word wrong on things and it's like, okay, wrong for who?
Wrong for who? Oh my God. I'm so glad I have a little bit of self-control now. Right for who? Wrong for who?
Exactly.
Yeah. And actually, let me go back to something before we miss it, because I think it was an important thing, is this term curious to self that Maria just said. I love that term because the idea is, you know, it's a way of kind of like self-healing. You know, it's like you're actually engaging in this curiosity in order to kind of understand something that's pertinent to you. That's why you kind of say, like, what do you love? It's like, well, this is what I love. And the thing is, if you love, you know, if you don't pursue the things that you love, no one else is going to encourage you to do that. You know, and I think one of the things, going back to our initial question, is how does this curiosity get beaten out of us? it comes from the fact that we allow society to disengage us from curious to self. And then we have to fight to kind of maintain it. So one of the things I think that needs to happen is, just like certain institutions exist, like hospitals there to fix sick people, and bars there for people to go to kind of drown their miseries. And, they're different kind of institutions. I believe, like, for instance, the reason I started, the Imaginaria project was because I feel there's a place where the curious to self people need to go and have a safe space, or I don't like the term safe space, but a place for themselves.
A place.
Yeah, a place. So I think a place for the curious to self people to congregate and kind of like feel comfortable being around themselves, being around their own.
And to ask questions. I want to bring this back to something Sarah said earlier too about, and you hear it all the time, or at least I do, and I guess because I do things like this a lot, but like, I have a stupid question, and I hate that because it immediately signals to me that someone in their life has made this person feel like their curiosity was not the thing to do, right? And so they're immediately already are shamed and don't even want to ask a question.
I know.
Yeah.
I agree with that. It comes across as and sometimes it's also, I'm going to be vulnerable, but they're like ashamed of being vulnerable. It's like, just ask the question, and that's why I go back to the growing up. It was like, there's not a stupid question, but then you still have those people that say there is a stupid question. And so in your life. And so.
Do you know the rest of that one?
No.
I just realized I do. Okay. There are no stupid questions, but there are stupid answers.
Maybe that's the fear. Maybe the fear is you'll give a stupid answer, but I mean, again, I think we take ourselves way too seriously as adults. And I think we would do better off if we had that childlike kind of mischief mentality. I don't think we benefit by being such serious adults. I think we see, and I find that, children may lack experience and may lack knowledge, but their innovation and their capabilities to kind of like adapt is far superior to what we have, and I think we do ourselves a disservice as a society by drilling ourselves out of that.
Yeah. And sometimes you'll see other people or adults, they'll tell kids, oh, don't do that, because they're fearful of the judgment of themselves more than the kids. Like if your child does that, then somehow that makes you look stupid. And in essence, that's actually detrimental to the curiosity of kids. So I'm going to bring up a couple of things that our audience has said. So Eric said, not afraid to put myself out there. And I think you are with 3 other people that are not afraid to put themselves out there. So we love that. And I'm going to talk about that just for a second. I find that curious people like other curious people. That when you start, because one, they're willing to go deeper in conversations with people and not feel judged, and they feel open and free. And isn't that sort of what we want for everyone, is to feel free and just being themselves? And ultimately it goes to authenticity. And I think back to even whenever I was younger, I was the first person out on the dance floor. Like I didn't give a shit what other people thought. I loved dancing. I was going to be out there. I was going to be, making a fool of myself of whatever people thought. And I didn't care because I loved it. And so many things in life, people worry about what it is that others will think about them. Curiosity.
Yeah. That made me think of just last night. I don't usually do things like this, but my college was closing, and so we had like an event, right? Like come say goodbye, hang out. We'll play some music for y'all, right? Whatever the thing is. And so I personally love loud music, and I have not been in public for loud music well, okay, I've stepped into like a bar, just walking through, like to listen to a song or something. Okay. And the way that I go out to listen to music, I have not done since 2019, as far as just going to a loud club. It's the sound, right? I like for it to reverberate in my bones. Okay. So really loud. And so usually where you can find me is right next to the speaker. So that's where I was, which is in front of everybody. Right. And there were other people around, but I was, of course, doing my favorite thing, which is to dance by myself. But it was so lovely. And it's so funny because the whole time, and you're, doing whatever. And when you say act a fool, I mean, act a whole fool. So I'm dancing all over the place. Okay. And every time I'm turning and looking, they're just laughing, and they're still having a good time. Some of them are joining in. Okay. If it's their jam. But it's just so funny to see people laughing. And then at the very end, okay, this is like 2 hours. Okay. And I'm just like sweating and just sweating. I go, and everybody's like, okay, the best part at the end, I'm just going, and all of that was super sober. You're welcome. Yeah.
I know.
So it's like, I don't even need the alcohol.
Yeah.
That question is, and I find I have times that I do certain things in order to stimulate my curiosity. So if I can add a question, I know I'm not.
Go for it.
Right. What are the things we do, like Maria just brought up, that stimulate our curiosity? And do we know what they are?
Oh, no, I've never asked self that. And I am.
So the question is, what are the things that stimulate our curiosity?
And do we know what they are?
And do we know what they are?
I do.
Yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
data pathways?
Yeah. So for me, I find that if I go for walks, walking stimulates my imagination and my curiosity to fire. And I found like there are certain things that I do. I actually have certain places I'll go.
Ooh.
And certain body positions that I can put myself into in order to stimulate curiosity. So my question is, you felt this impulse, Maria, and I'm thinking there are these impulses. Your body, like sometimes your body craves a certain food or craves a certain thing, and you realize, oh, you know what?
I crave loud music.
Your body craves curiosity, and I think what it does is it kind of say, hey, Maria, we haven't done this in a while. Let's do this. So I believe there are, so my question to everyone is, what are the things that we do to stimulate our curiosity, and do we know what they are?
Yeah.
And if we don't, then we got to find out what they are. And we got to ask ourselves, why are we not trying to investigate them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I do is I meet with a depth psychologist, and we analyze my dreams, and it makes us ask questions. So I had a really juicy one here recently, where my husband doesn't know this. I was getting into a very intimate situation with someone else in my dream. And keep in mind, sex dreams are typically not about sex, just so you know. And at the same time, my husband was outside and came outside, and the door was like 3/4 of the way open. And I like stopped myself, and I was like, oh, wait, I'm married. And so she asked me, I knew the other person, and I won't say who the other person is. And so she said, explain who this, what you think about this person. And I was like, well, that person's kind, they're humble. She was like, describe this person. Then she said, okay, tell me, about your husband. And I was like, responsible, passionate, and so I was giving certain words, and what we ended up figuring out from it by being curious was that there was some responsibility in my life that is keeping me from creativity and exploring creativity in my life, because I'm feeling drawn to the fact that I have to be responsible. Therefore, I'm stopping myself from taking some type of action within my life. And I was like, yep.
Okay.
And I was like, this resonates. And so just by being curious about my dream allowed us to, and also not being worried about judgment in what it is that I, the dream that I had, because most people would be like, whoa, you had a dream about some other person, like you immediately start judging yourself. But I've learned not to judge yourself on dreams, that they allow you. So that, as well as meditation, are some of the things that I use to help me with creativity and with being curious.
Mhm.
So what do you think? What about you, Maria?
For which part?
So Bruce's question, going to Bruce's question, what are the
Oh,
things that you do to be curious, or do you know what the things are and what to be curious, and what are they?
mhm. I woke up like this.
Just
So I just walk around like this. I can tell you now, this is a brand new question for me, and I love it, Bruce. Thank you for that, because that is like, I guess, the next like evolution, right? But what I do know already, and that I have like tried to take say like stock of, are the things that I am the things that make me happy curious. Because we said there's lots of different kinds of curiosity, right? But there's some things that yeah, okay, I could be curious, or even worse, like I'm not curious at all. And I do not want to study that topic like at all. So there's different parts, but I know the things that I am curious about, and so those are the things I try to pursue pretty much exclusively. So I'd say data connections is probably right. It's just where I'm curious. So we're talking specifically about like ERP connections and transferring them from multiple platforms. And doing things like that. So I don't know. And then I guess there's more to come from even thinking about that though, Bruce, because what is it? Why do I like those things? Right.
yeah.
It goes back to the idea of satisfaction. I mean, curiosity, and satisfaction brought it back. I mean, it's funny because I didn't know that part of the riddle.
Yeah.
But I do find that like when people ask me and they kind of say like, it's like, are you happy? Or people use the word happiness, or I find the word satisfaction is a great kind of pair with understanding. When I get little things where things start to kind of fall into place, like, oh wait, that goes like that and that does that. Getting deeper understanding brings about satisfaction. And if there's something that I've striven for, if striven is a word, I don't know.
Strived. Yeah.
Striven, did,
yeah.
It's to gain greater and deeper satisfaction, because I find that like, when you have certain experiences, and again, I think there is a relationship between what we're talking about between like body position and again, even sex and play, that the greater and deeper the satisfaction, the more you want to recall that and kind of do it again. And I think there's kind of a reward kind of sequence. It's like you kind of love the curiosity, but you also love the satisfaction of kind of figuring things out.
Yeah.
And I think there's a correlation between those two.
And when I think of the word satisfaction, I also think of happiness. And so like when I'm satisfied, I feel like, I don't know, just a happiness or a relief over me. And so I'm going to pull up a couple of other things. So Stephanie said, curiosity is what led me to skydiving, and some may call that foolish. And so Stephanie, you and I have that in common. I did skydiving as well. Only once. I'm glad I did it. I'm not sure I would do it one.
Okay. I can't call it foolish, but also what I can say is that I'm not insured enough to do that.
You're not what? Insured enough?
Insured enough. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I did it before kids. So Teresa also said being too serious makes you older faster. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I agree with that one. And then Tanya says, I love having high school interns. They think outside of the box of adult thinking, and we gave them a platform to express themselves. So, yeah, I got to say, we have some individuals that have joined us that are, I would say, probably Gen Z. And just the things, the ideas and the things that they're bringing to the table are just amazing. Because I think as you start to get, I don't want to say old, but older, sometimes you spend less time on creativity, or you become more complacent maybe in the comforts of sort of like where things are at, and it sometimes can stifle you, because the more you are curious, or the more that you're willing to be creative or think about other ideas or bring in other ideas, the more it can actually just keep you younger.
I would agree, without a doubt.
Yeah. And then Tanya also said, I go into audio rooms and lives. I think listen to learn from others. And so I like doing that as well. I just go in there, sometimes listen just to see what other people are thinking. I really like things where I'm just hearing and observing what other people are doing. And I think that's one of the reasons why I also probably started BOYBAS, is that I like to hear other people's experiences or talk about different types of things with different people. Also, what I really like about the panel discussion as well is bringing in some outside ideas. So, Bruce or Maria, as you start to think about curiosity, what other things come to mind that you think that you would want to chat about today?
Let's see. We can talk about the way in which they manifest in our lives. Maybe some of the things we've had to overcome and kind of like to manifest them deeper into our lives. Because I think one of the things that we talked about earlier was the fact that we have at times understood the fact that this natural thing that we're born with, this natural ability, gets censored, gets snipped, gets kind of suppressed. And some people who were, actually very much engaged in this found themselves to kind of be left out and had to disengage. So what are the protective mechanisms? What are the things we do to maintain this through life?
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I'm also thinking about how curiosity shapes sort of our understanding of the world as well. And so when you think about when people are curious about other things that maybe they aren't exposed to, a lot of times when we aren't curious, we tend to have a lot of times I find a very black and white way of looking at things, when in actuality I found that things are really like a spectrum, and it's a lot of gray in between the white and the black as you start to look at any type of topic. So like when you think about all the political type of topics that are out there today, I can find like a bunch of gray in between all of them. No matter what topic, no matter if I'm like very passionate about one of them, I still can see the other side of the coin. And I'm curious if how do we think curiosity sort of shapes our understanding of the world? And I'd love to know this from our audience as well.
I think it is our understanding of the world. And I think that what happens is our curiosity has created the infrastructure that is our understanding of the world. Everything that we have has come about as a result of someone's desire to manifest something out of their innate curiosity. So, I mean, bridges, dams, buildings, houses, the way we dress, the way we look, everything we do, the ideas that we have in our brains, everything that we have that frames our kind of understanding is a result of our curiosity. It wouldn't have happened without someone basically proposing something that everyone else realized this has consequences, has value. And I think one of the things that kind of goes back to the original question is, where do we place authority? Do we place authority? Do we place authority on the person's ability to make compelling arguments about the information, or the title that somebody holds? I think it's the former. When you talk about Gen Z, you talk about children, their ability to be compelling, to be provocative, to be able to come up with, genuinely beautiful solutions is what we really should strive for. And I think in a way we kind of suppress that when we start saying, well, I'm the dean of the university, or I'm the president of the corporation, or I'm this, and therefore I basically am going to take all this and I'm going to suppress it. And I think that's a mistake.
Mm-hmm. I like that. What do you think, Maria? How do you think curiosity shapes our understanding of the world?
I don't know about understanding. I don't know what it is to understand, I think, just now. Because, there's always more to learn, right? But if you're not curious, then you're not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not growing.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot input. You could probably have a whole new show, right? We'll do Bruce and Maria part 2 over why we're quelling. What word is that? Curiosity in the first place, right? So you have to think about, and just thinking about my own personal day, but I know how many questions I get asked, and I'm not talking about the ones I get paid to answer. Okay. I'm talking about the ones that start before I start work. Okay. And they go on after. So at a certain, you have to think, when you were a kid, once that threshold, that emotional, whatever that threshold was for your parents or authority figure, to where they didn't want to answer, either they didn't know the answer, they were tired, right? All these other reasons that could have been, but somebody was like, don't worry about it. It's gonna, you'll get dinner when you get dinner, or something like that, right? Whatever the thing was. So what I put a lot of intention to, because I am shaping one world specifically, I may shape others just walking by, but this particular one I'm in charge of legally. So when I get to that point, that threshold of I can't have any more questions, or if it's just a particular part of the day, right? It's usually at the end, but if there's a particular moment in the day, like if I'm driving in a place where I'm looking for parking all of a sudden downtown, I love you very much, and I can't answer that right now. Right? So it's those set things. And then if it's at the end of the day, because I know a lot of more people need this one, is I cannot answer any more questions today. Try me tomorrow.
With my husband, when we have exceeded our ability in the day to have a conversation, we say words. We just say words.
And, I love that.
And and the other person knows I'm overwhelmed. Like all I can think of is the word words. Like words, I know I'm supposed to say
That's
words.
What I got.
That's what I got.
So it's like a safe word.
It
you
is.
Have a safe word. It's like no more.
Yeah, she's practicing.
No more.
Yeah. You don't tell her secrets, Bruce.
Oh wait, that's a different topic.
Honestly,
I would say they've got a whole vocabulary list of things, words.
Yeah, because absolutely. I love it. I also love the idea of like Bruce and Maria part 2,
right?
Because I think we're actually only scratching the surface of so many other things, that kind of like come from this,
Well, I think that some of the other things you guys have been mentioning is personal growth, development. So when you really think about curiosity, it really influences our ability to focus on our personal growth and development. Because when we're not curious, we're then not also continuing to learn and evolve as individuals. And so I know for me, like I love these types of conversations because I just pick up different things from different people. And that's what I love. And I think that is ultimately curiosity, is you're willing to understand other perspectives and you value hearing other perspectives and pulling out the things that sort of resonate with you along the way that spark an idea or spark, let's talk about that. So I love those just conversations.
Yeah, I think that it's good to put yourself in a position. I mean, one of the questions that you've given us is like, in what ways do you encourage curiosity in your daily life? And I think, in my case, it's, sought to find people who
Mhm.
engage with me.
Yeah.
And I kind of find that, like, you know, I can be there and kind of like be supportive. It's like, yeah, you go girl, you go guy, you know, but I'm not a cheerleader. I'm not a prophet. I mean, I love to engage. So I find like when people see me around and they kind of say, hey, Bruce, I would like to engage, then I'm going to be in. And when I find that the engagement dwindles or disappears, I move off. And I think, you know, in the case that we have conversations with individuals, your responsibility to that conversation is if you lose the ability to be compelling and to bring value, that other person has the right to kind of say like, oh God, Bruce is calling. He's like, Sam, we're not here. Tell him.
Oh, no.
You know, so I think that in that case, I mean, you know, people should understand if you move away from them or you kind of, you know, disengage, it's because you found that there's no value there. And in my case, the value of engagement in terms of issues of, you know, curiosity, creativity, imagination I will always find a place for that. You know, so I think in that case, I think that's basically a big part of it for me anyway.
So I have two questions, and one or the other might resonate, or both of them might resonate. But have you ever had curiosity that you wished you had pursued further that maybe you didn't? Or what was the last thing that sparked your curiosity?
I'll go. I think, you know, in my case, the work that I do as an architect is a constant engagement in pursuing an open-ended question that will never be answered. So the answer is I'm always, pursuing something further. And, you know, as a result, at any time, day or night, you know, in fact, I've kind of written down like a page full of notes here of things that kind of were brought up by these conversations. In fact, I remember one time, you know, when I used to lecture as a professor, you know, I would go on to the lectern and people would say like, where are your notes? Because I have it here. And I had 5 or 6 pieces of blank paper. And it's like, are you joking? This is a serious thing. You know, you're giving a lecture at a major university. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
It was that as I would speak, I would take notes because I already had an idea in my head what I was going to speak about. So at the end, I would have these pages were filled with my notes because I would be taking notes as I would be thinking and writing and talking. So for me, that engagement is my curiosity is constantly. It's a self-fulfilling thing at this point. It kind of feeds itself. So it's never going to be finished. There's always, I mean, I'm going to die with models unfinished, with drawings undone, with questions unanswered, with all kinds of things. And I was like, oh, I need more time, but time runs out. Right. But the thing is, like, you know, I just look at it like I keep looking down the road. It's like, can I see the end? I can't even see the end. It just seems to get bigger and bigger. I seem to kind of fall further and further behind, you know, the limit of where the horizon of my imagination and curiosity, if that makes sense.
It does. So Maria, what about you? So a curiosity that maybe you wished you had pursued further, or the last thing that sparked your curiosity?
I would have to really sit down and think about I think there's been, to be honest, I think there's 3 or 4 things that maybe I didn't fully investigate in my lifetime, right? So in 37 years, I think there's 3 or 4 in there, but I couldn't tell you what they are right now. So I will tell you that I probably have more examples of times where I've been so curious that I hurt myself. Yeah. So that's probably, I wish I did less of that, but that's okay too. And then what was the second part? Please.
So, or
It's sparked your curiosity.
Oh, it was an or.
Or.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
I said you can do both.
Okay, good. I love both. And then data connection, the ERP connectors. It's been like 60 days. It's my special interest. I can't help it.
What's
ERP? Enterprise resource planning.
Your bookkeeping software.
Yeah. Or
where accounting makes you go. Yeah.
I keep all my receipts in my pocket.
You're the best.
I'm constantly like, what did I buy here? It's like, what's this?
There's an app for that. Yeah.
Oh, really?
There's a few. Yeah.
Bruce is like, wait, app, no.
Yeah. Then you just take a picture and it OCR.
I almost didn't get on the program this morning because I was like, it's like, why am I hitting the wrong buttons? I can't. Why is this stuff not on? Like, I don't get it.
Early.
Like, just press the enter studio. You got it.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, Sarah comes on and is like, Bruce, yeah, see the button? Yeah. Hit the button. It was that easy?
Yes.
Oh.
Sometimes, it's funny. We tend to try to make things more difficult than they really are. We're like, well, we have to have like all this setup and all this other stuff, right?
I think also some people are better at certain things. And I agree. I try to make things simple. And Sarah, you just understand this stuff so much better than I do. You're like, you kind of see Bruce, it's like, he's tied to a tree and one arm is broken. And it's kind of like there's a badger that's eating his fingers. And it's like, oh my goodness, how did you get that messed up from what I told you? It's like, you shouldn't even be out of the house. Right?
That's what it felt like this morning. I was like, wait, where are you? I'm like, click on the link, type in your name, press enter studio. That's it. 3 steps.
It happens. I'm laughing, but it happens. Okay. So here's one phrase I haven't heard this morning yet. Are you guys ready for it? You're sitting down, right? Okay. To fuck around is human, and to find out is divine. So you're talking about evolving. Yeah. So, and there's a lot of times too, talking about like, if, those times I wish I had regretted or gone further or something like that. But sometimes you need more data, right? We're talking about me loving data. That's where it comes from. So if I'm in even a personal relationship and I don't know which group or camp of people you're in, kind of like what Bruce was talking about, like, are you a curious person or are you not? I need more data. And so if I need more data, then I have to go interact with you. So.
Interestingly enough, I find that sometimes people have to fill the void, that they have to have an answer and they don't feel comfortable just saying, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I need to ask some further questions, or I need to get curious and play around, or, it's being comfortable with saying, you know what, I don't know that yet. Let me go and investigate. And so it's being, I think part of curiosity is also having courage to say you don't know all the answers, or that someone else might have some information that you didn't realize as well.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about this. Let me just, I know okay.
Now we're getting done.
Yeah. Hold on.
Cool.
Okay, the first time I ever, and we'll say out of school, right? So the first time I did a professional teaching class. Okay, and I understand I had done already like hundreds of presentations before this. I'm already like not afraid because that's what I was prepared for. So I go to do my first construction class, okay? And I'm at a really fancy company. And I remember the person, like my supervisor who was we tag teamed it the first time, right? Because it was together. And we had a project team member. And it's about financials, right? And it's the first class the company's had about Procore financials. And it's like, oh my gosh, and there's got to be a PowerPoint. I don't think I ever did a PowerPoint after that. There's got to be a PowerPoint. There's got to be this. We're going to have questions. Do the clicker. We got prizes, okay? It was a whole thing. And so then I was like, I think I said something like, oh, are we going to do questions at the end or something like that, or have time or And the other person was afraid of people asking questions because he wouldn't know the answers. And that just like, I was like, what? I was like, you just politely tell them like, oh, this is a new software. We're all learning together. Thank you for your curious question. I'll go find out. Yep. It sounds so hard. Why was that embarrassing? Because I didn't know everything?
Right.
I didn't have a degree that says I know everything. Do you guys?
Nope.
No.
I didn't get one. Where are they handing them out?
I've been working with, it has changed over the years, but I've been working with relatively the same software for 17 years, something like
Yeah.
that. There's
Big
still
numbers.
always going to be other things that you don't know. And so one of the ways that I do it is I say, you know what? Let me get back to you on that. And so I don't have to say the word I don't know. Like if you're afraid
No.
of the word I don't know, let me go explore. Let me go
Yeah.
spend some time offline. I want to come back with some more information for you.
Yes. My brain works better not on camera.
Another thing that happens a lot of times is when someone asks a genuinely good question that hasn't occurred to you, it sparks you get excited. It's like, I love that question. I have no idea. But if I was going to pursue it, maybe I would do this. I mean, and I think that's the kind of thing that for me, I love, and I think that in that case, you want those kind of interactions. I mean, I've always enjoyed that idea of, and I think a lot of times, especially when you get into positions of management, we always assume the person in authority is the person who knows the answer. I don't like that. I think the person is in charge because if they have the answer or not is irrelevant, but they're likely to be able to get a useful solution given the opportunity. So they're more likely to be able to come up with a useful solution than actually know an answer. Because like Sarah just said, I mean, there's always something, even in the things there are going to be things that you don't know. And
literally.
It's the ability to adapt your knowledge to a circumstance. In construction, I love the challenges. I mean, a lot of people, like when something comes up and everyone's stumped, certain people step back. I'm like, oh yeah, let's go. And I like
more. Yeah.
I distinguish between aggressive and reckless. Reckless is just doing stupid things. Aggressive is saying, okay, what are the things we know and what are the things that we can apply right now that we know are not going to be detrimental, and how does that further our understanding? Well, I love that idea that, I mean, I get excited by the things. And I mean, maybe this is one of the things that I've just kind of built into my mind is that when somebody asks me a question I don't know, it excites me. And I kind of like, I love that question. That's a great question. And I never thought of it as like, I don't have the answer, because I never have the answer. In fact, in my life, I'm 65 years old plus. I have no answers to anything. I know nothing. And
That's
it's
beautiful.
Like, I can only say it's like, look, this has worked for me in this circumstance. I don't know if it will work for you, and it may not work again in my circumstance. So I love the fact that I'm just trying to figure it out. And in 65 years, it's been a completely fruitless but enjoyable, satisfying adventure. I am no closer to any answers to anything. But I've kind of like stumbled a bunch of holes. I've skinned my knee and I've hit my head and I've kind of like, burnt my fingers, and it's like that's hot. Don't touch that. I did learn one thing. That's hot. Don't touch that.
Don't touch that. Yeah.
Don't touch that. It's hot.
So Bruce, I was thinking, we know a lot, yet we know nothing.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I find that, that like, it's like reading a book. By the time I read a book, I have 5 more books I have to read just to clarify the things from that book. By the time you read those 5, you have 50. And by the time you read 50, you realize you have a lifetime worth of reading to do and you're not going to live that long. So just like, I'll read them as quickly as I can, So I think we need to kind of indulge and engage in our curiosity and imagination. We need to be an imagination nation.
Yeah. All right. I want to leave us with final thoughts. So final thoughts that you, and I almost feel like Bruce, you just did it, but you might have more. So final thoughts that you want to leave the audience with related to curiosity and pursuing curiosity in their life.
Okay. I'm going to take a page from Maria's book, and I'm going to basically go back to this piece that I found was, to me, the best part of today, which is find time to engage in what is curious to self.
I like it.
Yeah. I like
nice
that
and
one.
simple.
Mine's going to be fuck around and find out. Yeah. But don't use it in a negative way anymore. Flip it.
Yeah,
Just
exactly.
find out.
Find out.
And take the judgment out of your curiosity, because once you do, let's say you do find out, it was neither good nor bad. Okay, it's just what was.
And
Yeah.
and a lot
Science.
and a lot of times those things that Sarah was talking about is like it's wrong to who, or it's inappropriate to who, or it's like so that question is like who, and it should always be you.
Why?
Yeah, that part, Bruce. It should always be you.
It should always be you. We need, honestly, Maria, did you get your merch from the anniversary show?
No, I still need to do that. I'm a bad girl.
I mean, I was supposed. We need to have T-shirts.
I'll talk to you guys about that. So,
Okay.
everything I designed was gone by the time I went back to it. Yeah, so I have to like redesign it all. So,
that would have been heart crushing. I'm sorry that happened to you.
Okay.
So, but we're working on it. So
I'll love whatever you pick out. Yeah.
Be curious to self.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that. So for me, final thoughts on curiosity. Curiosity for me counters fear.
Yes.
And be okay with failure, because that requires courage. And so allow yourself the creativity to find who you are, to find your authentic self, and not give a shit what other people think.
Not one. But also, and I'll challenge everyone too for your weekend is to see how many judgment words you're using, right? Because I heard the word failure. That's also a judgment word. Who fits? According to who? Failure to who?
Actually, that's a great idea. It's a T-shirt, like judgment word, and then have line. And at the bottom, like to who?
To who?
To who? It's like failure to who? Disrespectful to who? This country was based on irreverence, defiance, resolve, and like that idea of kind of being skeptical. These are the things that like make people do things that other people say that's pointless, and then you're like, oh my God, look what he did, look what she did, that's incredible. That's what makes, like, when it goes back to the question, like, how does it shape our world? Our imagination and curiosity shapes our world, and no one's going to admit that, but that's the reality. It's our doing these things like garage bands, startups, right? Those things that everyone said, like, oh, those kids in the garage, oh my God, they're making so much noise. Or the people playing in, phones in the basement. So like
doing gaming, like, that's stupid. You should get off of that.
Yeah, exactly. But these like hobbies used to be an American pastime. America thrived on hobbies. Your hobby was your engagement in that which was important to you. And it was like, but that's selfish. It's self-indulgent. To who? Right? But so many positive things came out of those things. Everybody had a garage. People were constantly borrowing tools from each other. And they're like, what is that? It's like, oh, it's a flying machine. It's like, you made a flying machine? When are you trying it out? This weekend. Can I come?
Right.
These are but I think we've gotten distracted from our hobbies. We now look at our hobbies as self-indulgent and selfish and like not, kind of healthy, but they are healthy. That's where our creativity and our imagination grows and manifests all the things in the world that are great.
I love that. Well, thank you both for joining us today. I love this conversation. I feel like there's several things that have sparked from this conversation. And so I think maybe a part 2 later on in the year does make sense. So let's figure out what that topic is. And then hopefully Kate can join us to the conversation.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I have things to tell her. I'm going to have to go message her now.
I know. And so thank you everyone for your interactiveness today and for being curious with us. And I hope that you have an amazing weekend and this helps to boost you to have an amazing weekend and then head into the next week. And then we will see you next Friday, where Cate and I are going to be doing Shooting the Shit again. And so we're just going to be talking about just stuff in our life and what it is that we're dealing with. And then I do want to let you know the next 2 weeks, I'm actually going to be in Hawaii. And so Cate and I have decided that we're going to take off the next 2 weeks in June. And so then we'll be back the 3rd week of June. So we're going to take a little bit of a summer break. So again, thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Maria. Thank you to our audience for joining us. And we'll see you next Friday.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.